page 2 of the supplement.
Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai. 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 I will build this world from love, yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai. And you must build this world from love, yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai. And if we build this world from love, yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai, then God will build this world from love, yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai. Olam chesed yibaneh, 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 yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Such a beautiful song with which to begin Shabbat. It's really more of a prayer than a song in a lot of ways. Olam chesed yibana, the world will be built by chesed. The English lyrics use the word love, but chesed isn't really love. It's closer to kindness, or perhaps better, kindness seasoned with love. In some contexts, it's often translated as loving kindness, but kindness is really the root of it. In any case, David, it's a great choice for an opening this week. When you told me you wanted to start with it, I had the same reaction that you said motivated you to select it, which is that this week has been a particularly rough one for chesed. It has been characterized more by a deficit of chesed than by its abundance. Last weekend, 6 Israelis who had been taken hostage by Hamas on October 7th were found in a tunnel under Gaza. After they had survived captivity for some 330 days, Hamas had executed them just hours or days before the Israeli army got there. Where's the chesed in that cruel bloodthirstiness? Wednesday, a 14-year-old armed with a military-style weapon murdered 2 of his classmates and 2 teachers at Appalachia High School outside of Atlanta. Where's the chesed in that tragedy? Our world desperately needs more chesed. We need to build the world with chesed. We need God to help us build the world with chesed. If, as we sang, we build this world with chesed, then God will build the world with chesed. In our Torah portion this week, there's a strange case that may point us to one small step in that process. The Torah portion contains an interesting reflection on who bears responsibility for a tragedy. Not so much in an attempt to assign blame, but rather to imagine what could have been done differently, what should be done differently in the future. The portion describes a situation in which a corpse is found out in the open, in no man's land, between towns. And whoever it is, the murderer, whoever it is who killed the victim, is unknown. The communal leaders come out and they measure the distance between the body and the towns. And whichever town is closest, the elders of that town perform a special ritual that involves killing a heifer, presumably as some kind of compensation, atonement for the blood of the victim. But then they say something that's kind of fascinating. Referring to the murdered person, they say, "Our hands did not shed this blood. Our eyes didn't see it done." They say, "We didn't do it. It's not our fault." Why do the elders of the town have to say this? The rabbis of the Babylonian Talmud were puzzled by this also, and they ask, can it really enter our minds that the court of justice would shed blood? Would we ever really have assumed that the leaders of the community had done this crime, that they were at fault? Rather, the Talmud continues, the meaning of their statement is this: this person did not come to us for help. We didn't send him away without giving him food. We didn't let him travel without an escort. Right? So the leaders are asserting, we didn't contribute to his death. We didn't neglect his needs. We didn't ignore his plight. If only we'd known about his dire situation, we would certainly have assisted him. We would have guided him. We would have protected him. But because we didn't know, we're not responsible for his death. So the Babylonian Talmud, in this example, understands the elders to be denying responsibility for the victim. The Jerusalem Talmud takes the other approach and denies responsibility for the murderer. It says they didn't fail to bring someone to justice. They didn't let a potentially violent criminal loose who would then perpetrate this act. Since this week's portion is called Shoftim, which means judges, and mostly concerns itself with the establishment and administration of the judicial system, this claim that they didn't set a killer free resonates well with the rest of the portion. So the Babylonian Talmud denies responsibility for the victim, the Jerusalem Talmud denies responsibility for the murderer, but to quote or to paraphrase Shakespeare, they doth protest too much, methinks. And what I mean is that because they feel the need to deny their responsibility, they have to recognize that they could have some responsibility. The great 20th century scholar Nechama Leibovitz writes, responsibility for wrongdoing does not only lie with the perpetrator himself or even with the accessory. Lack of proper care and attention is also criminal. Whoever keeps to his own quiet corner and refuses to have anything to do with the evil world, who observes oppression and violence but does not stir a finger in protest, cannot proclaim with a clear conscience that our hands have not shed this blood. In other words, although certainly the perpetrator of the crime bears the primary guilt for their actions, other people, other elements of society that could have intervened in a way to prevent the tragedy from occurring, they also have blood on their hands. Responsibility for the deaths of the 6 Israeli hostages rests entirely with Hamas. They are the ones who murdered them. But what if so much of the rest of the world had not been as solicitous and understanding of Hamas's terrorist attacks? What if instead they had pressured Hamas to release the hostages, showing a little more chesed toward Israel and Israelis? What if Prime Minister Netanyahu had demonstrated more chesed toward the hostages and their families and been more willing, more motivated to make a deal that would have let them come home alive? They may say, in the words of our portion, our hands did not shed this blood, but their hands are not entirely clean either. And in Atlanta, it is the 14-year-old shooter who killed his classmates and teachers. But what if His father had not gotten him a gun, despite his having been investigated for threatening a mass shooting. Having a little more chesed on his son by not equipping him to become a murderer. What if someone else who saw his social media posts had intervened with him, getting him some help that recognized him as a potential threat, showing chesed for his theoretical victims? What if our elected officials moved beyond thoughts and prayers and stopped allowing civilians to own military rifles, demonstrating chesed for the children and other innocents who have been and will continue to be killed by these weapons of war? It is, after all, a fact of life in American society. They may say, in the words of our portion, our hands did not shed this blood, but their hands are not clean either. Responsibility for these tragedies may rest primarily with those who pulled the triggers, but it does not rest only with them. If we truly want to build a world of chesed, if that desire is more than just a pretty song, then we have to look for ways to bring more chesed into this world, in our own actions and in those of our leaders and representatives. I wanted to share these thoughts up front tonight because traditionally there is no public mourning on Shabbat. Shabbat is supposed to be a day of joy, a day of renewal, rather than one of sorrow and worry. But it is hard to come to Shabbat when our hearts are so heavy. We have to try to let it go or put it aside, even if only for these few precious hours of Shabbat. So I wanted to name our communal grief before we really start Shabbat tonight. This week we grieve as Jews and we grieve as Americans. And there's one other reason that we grieve this week as a congregation, but it's a very different example, perhaps an exception that proves the rule. This week as a congregation, we are mourning the natural death of our longtime member, leader, and dear friend, Marcia Hicks. But here's the difference. While we may struggle to see any chesed in the murders of the hostages, the victims in Atlanta, Marcia's last days were full of chesed. She had several congregants and friends who showed chesed in their countless hours visiting, advocating, running errands, making arrangements for her. When she entered hospice, several congregants showed chesed by writing her notes, telling her how much she meant to them. After her death, many members of this community came together to mourn her, to bury her, which our tradition calls chesed shel emet, true chesed, because it is purely selfless, since it cannot be repaid or reciprocated by the one for whom it is done. And then we came back here for lunch, showing chesed by comforting her family and comforting each other. Perhaps this is Marcia's last lesson for us. We do know how to build a world with chesed. We've demonstrated it. We did it for her. So let that chesed show us how to show chesed in our situations, in other situations as well. Amen. Now that we have given voice to our grief and refocused our intentions on chesed, we're ready to welcome Shabbat. Out of the darkness, let there be light. So we continue with lighting the Shabbat candles. Karen, thank you.
Another week of work is ended. Again, Shabbat brings welcome peace. We pause from our labors to let Shabbat give another dimension to our lives. These Shabbat candles are symbols of the holiness we seek. Their brightness dispels gloom and lights a path to faith and hope. Their glow reminds us of the sacred bonds that link us to our people over space and time. Their radiance summons us to fulfill our people's mission, to cast a light of freedom, justice, and peace upon all the world.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We turn to page 13 in the Siddur as we welcome the Shabbat angels of peace and joy. Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharei, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Archuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zeitchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
We turn back to the supplement on page 4 for one of the Psalms of Kabbalat Shabbat, welcoming Shabbat, Psalm 96. At the bottom of page 4, we find the words Ya'aloz Sadai, Kol Asher Bo. The fields and everything in them will celebrate, and all the trees of the forest will sing with joy.
Ya'aloz Sadai, v'chol asher bo, Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 Ya'aloz Sadai, v'chol asher bo, Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 as you run into kol hatzeyar, as you run into kol hatzeyar, as you run into kol hatzeyar, as you run into kol hatzeyar. Ya'aloz Sadai, v'chol asher bo, Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 Ya'aloz Sadai, v'chol asher bo, Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 as you run into kol hatzeyar, as you run into kol hatzeyar, as you run into kol hatzeyar, as you run into kol hatzeyar. Ya'aloz Sadai, v'chol asher bo, Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 Ya'aloz Sadai, v'chol asher bo, Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 ay.
Back in the Siddur, we turn to page 361. From the joy of the natural world, the joy of the trees of the forest, we turn to a higher joy. The poet on page 361 describes the joy of selfless giving. He didn't use the Hebrew for it, but this is the joy of chesed, page 361. I need not receive in return for giving. I caressed an injured bird because it was in pain. I embraced my child because I love him. I guided a blind man across the street because he needed help. I looked in awe at a sunset because it was beautiful. I know a higher joy. I live in order to spend myself, and the fountain is enriched the more I draw on it. On page 21, we are ready to welcome the Shabbat bride, Lecha Dodi, come my beloved, to greet Shabbat.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmianu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad, Ushemo echad, L'shemu tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki hi mekor haberacha, merosh mikedem nisucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tchila. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitorari, hitorari, kiva orechu mi ori, uri, shir dabeiri, kivod Adonai alayich nikla. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'v'tzola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
We stay standing as we turn to page 27, Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Bagala, uvizman kariv, v'imeru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach, le'alam ulamei almaya, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, ויתהלל שמי דקודשה
Barichu.
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו
Amen. We keep a finger on page 28. We turn to page 5 of the supplement. Am I awake? Leading into Baruch Hu.
Yadidai-dai-dai, 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 yadidai-dai-dai. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Yadidai-dai-dai, 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 yadidai-dai-dai.
Can be seated. And we continue on page 28. On the left-hand side of page 28 at the bottom. Light and darkness, night and day, we marvel at the mystery of stars.
Moon and sky, sand and sea, we marvel at the mystery of sun.
Twilight, high noon, dusk and dawn. Though we are mortal, we are creation's crown.
Flesh and bone, steel and stone, we dwell in fragile temporary shelters.
Grant steadfast love, compassion, grace. Sustain us, O God. Our origin is dust.
Majesty, mercy, love endure. We are but little lower than the angels.
Resplendent skies, sunset, sunrise. The grandeur of creation lifts our lives.
Evening darkness, morning dawn. Renew our lives as you renew all time.
On page 29, we give thanks for the gift of Torah, a gift that God gives us in love, Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, Mishpatim, otanu limadeta, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shovenu u'kumenu nasiach b'chukecha v'nizmach b'divrei Toratecha u'mitzvot Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev amo Yisrael. Ohev amo Yisrael.
Page 30.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha u'lechtecha b'derech u'shokbecha u'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha.
Page 31 in the 6th line from the top.
Leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kadoshim le'Elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet.
On page 32, let's continue in English on the bottom right. You cannot find redemption until you see the flaws in your own soul and try to efface them. Nor can a people be redeemed until it sees the flaws in its soul and tries to efface them. But whether it be an individual or a people, whoever shuts out the realization of their flaws is shutting out redemption. We can be redeemed only to the extent to which we see ourselves. The world is in need of redemption, but the redemption must not be expected to happen as an act of sheer grace. Our task is to make the world worthy of redemption. Our faith and our works continue with our prayer for the evening, asking God to watch over us at night and restore us to life in the morning. On page 8 of the supplement, Hashkivenu.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Hamidenu Malkeinu Lechaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom. Hamidenu Malkeinu Lechaim.
We come now to the Amidah, the central section of the service. Begins on page 35b, first paragraph of Hebrew in the fourth line of the Hebrew, the fourth word from the left, and the last word in that line as well is chasde, acts of chesed. So in the English, the first chesed refers to God who bestows loving kindness. That's the translation for chesed there, Amidah as well. So we'll begin together on page 35b and then continue individually from there. If you wish to continue with the liturgy of the Siddur, it goes through page 38, where you can find your own prayers in your own heart and soul after that. When you've had as much time as you'd like, you may be seated. We begin by rising together on page 35b.
Adonai safatai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha. Adonai safatai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot, Umevi Goel Livnei V'nehem, Lama'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Ufoked Umoshia Umagen. Baruch atah Adonai, Metim atarab lehoshia, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye metim berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Micha mocha ba'al gevurot, Umido melach, Melech memit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman ata l'hachayot metim. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hametim. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, V'kadoshim b'chol yom yalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom.
We turn our thoughts now to our loved ones and friends who are ill, those who are struggling physically or spiritually or emotionally. On the inside back cover of the Siddur, we find the words to Mishaberach, our prayer for healing.
Mishaberach Avoteinu Mekor HaBracha Le'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage. Amen.
Tonight in our Chaye Shalom family, we think particularly of Rick Albertini, Phyllis Burke, Arthur Campbell, Phyllis Dillon, Valerie Frank, Jennifer Galvin, David Glazer, Carolyn Halunin, Lily Krentzman, Cheryl Leahy, Gary Levine, Alfred Mayer, Nancy Mayer, Paul Newfield, Sarah Newfield, Mark Panasuk, Gail Rosenberg, Cindy Sherman, John Terrell, Yonina bat David HaKohen V'Sara, Esther bat Chaim V'Goldi, Rella bat Moshe Haskell Ufegalea, Fegi bat Shlomo Nisan Halevi. If there is someone for whom you are particularly concerned tonight, someone in your prayers this evening, I invite you to say that person's name aloud now. We hold in our hearts all of our friends and loved ones who are ill.
Mishaberach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
On page 148, let's join together in the prayer for our country. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your Spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony to banish hatred and bigotry and to safeguard the ideals and free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country. May this land, under your providence, be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen. Having prayed for this country, we turn to the song sheet and join in the prayer for the state of Israel. Sovereign of the universe, accept in loving kindness and with favor our prayers for the state of Israel, her government, and all who dwell within her boundaries and under her authority. Open our eyes and our hearts to the wonder of Israel, and strengthen our faith in your power to work redemption in every human soul. Grant us also the fortitude to keep ever before us those ideals upon which the state of Israel was founded. Grant courage, wisdom, and strength to those entrusted with guiding Israel's destiny to do your will. Be with those on whose shoulders Israel's safety depends, and defend them from all harm. Spread over Israel and all the world your shelter of peace, and may the vision of your prophet soon be fulfilled. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. On October 7th, as part of the brutal Hamas attack on Israel, Hamas took about 240 or so Israelis hostages into Gaza. Among the most familiarly well-known of the families advocating to get the hostages released were Rachel Goldberg Polin and John Polin, the parents of Hirsch Goldberg Polin. One of the ways that they advocated that they kept the plight of the hostages in front the number of days since October 7th. This week, of course, Hirsch was one of the hostages who was found murdered by Hamas, and some of us may have expected that they would stop wearing the tape because their son was no longer coming back October 7th on Monday. Because for them, it was not only about Hirsch, as much pain as they were in for their loss of their son, but they wanted everyone's children to be returned, whatever age the hostages were. They continue to advocate for the release of all of the hostages, and so do we as we continue on the song sheet with prayer for the release of hostages. Achenu.
Achenu, kol Beit Yisrael. Achenu, kol Beit Yisrael. B'tzara uvashivya, haomdim bein bayam uvein bayabasha. Hamakom yirachem aleihem, v'yotzihem mitzara, lirvacha, u'me'afel al ha'ora, u'mishi'bud li ge'ula, hashta bagala u'bizman karim. Hamakom yirachem aleihem, v'yotzihem mitzara, lirvacha, u'me'afel al ha'ora, u'mishi'bud li ge'ula, hashta bagala u'bizman karim.
Today is day 337 that the approximately 100 remaining hostages are in captivity. May they be released soon. We turn to page 51 and we rise for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'tet gedula le'yotzer b'reishit, shelo asanu k'goyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. Many of you have heard me say before that although we are most familiar with Kaddish from being said in the context of remembering a loved one who has died, that Kaddish is actually a statement of praise and gratitude to God. This past Monday, speaking at the funeral for her son Hirsch, his mother Rachel beautifully articulated poignantly that perspective. So as we prepare for Kaddish tonight, I want to share her words. I have had a lot of time during the past 332 days to think about my sweet boy, my Hirsch. And one thing I keep thinking about is how, out of all the mothers in the world, God chose to give Hirsch to me. What must I have done in a past life to deserve such a beautiful gift? It must have been glorious. It is not that Hirsch was perfect, but he was the perfect son for me. And I am so grateful to God, and I want to thank God right now for giving me this magnificent present of my Hirsch. For 23 years, I was privileged to have this most stunning treasure, to be Hirsch's mama. I'll take it and say thank you. I just wish it had been for longer. We recall the loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Tonight, we especially remember our longtime member, leader, and dear friend, Marcia Hicks, who was laid to rest this past week. We also particularly remember Leah Golden, mother of Ken Golden, for whom we are still in Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning. And our congregational family remembers with special affection our loved ones whose Yahrzeit will occur this coming week. Mike Berkowitz, husband of Natalie Berkowitz. Hyman Shear, father of Jack Shear, Martin Faber, father of Andrew Faber, Martin Newfield, father of Sandy Newfield, and my grandmother, Sarah Pele. We also remember all those killed on and since October 7th, especially the 6 hostages found murdered by Hamas this week: Ori Danino, Carmel Gat, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, Alex Lubinov, Almog Sarusi, and Eden Yerushalmi. If you are remembering someone this evening, we invite you to say that person's name aloud now. Zichronam livracha. May the memories of all our dear ones be a blessing. If you're saying Kaddish in someone's memory tonight, we ask you to rise now. In loving support of the mourners, we rise as a congregation. In gratitude to God for the gift of the lives of their loved ones, those who are in mourning and those remembering someone, say Kaddish on page 52. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayeichon u'vyomeichon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agalau v'izman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shmei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, d'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to those who mourn and comfort all of the bereaved. And we say, Amen. Please be seated. Rhonda, if you would.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Torah study tomorrow at 9 with Rabbi Carr, in person with bagels and coffee, and remote. Tomorrow, Havdalah service at 7 p.m. on Zoom. Next Friday night, Taught Shabbat from 5:45 to 7. Enjoy Shabbat dinner at TCS. Join us in celebration of family and community at our monthly Taught Shabbat. Rabbi Ken, cantorial soloist David Rothberg, and special guest Eileen Newton will lead kids in songs, stories, crafts, and a Shabbat candlelighting. Be sure to invite your friends and family. The Sisterhood Kickoff Brunch, Sunday, September 15th from 11:30 to 2:30. Come join us for food and friendship at the Chateau Restaurant, 1165 Park Street in Stoughton. A 50-50 raffle will support future Sisterhood activities. Free for new members, those that renew membership, and of course, life members. If you are a new member, this event is a wonderful way to meet other members of Sisterhood. Throughout the year, Family Table needs our help. 30 cans of tuna and 30 cans of vegetarian soup. If you would like to donate money to Family Table monthly instead of bringing food, there is a link in your weekly email. Please remember to check links in your weekly emails, and you can always call TCS office if you have any questions. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Rhonda. There is one other upcoming event that is worth mentioning, believe it or not. In 26 days, 4 weeks from this past Wednesday, it will be Erev Rosh Hashanah. We are in the month of Elul, the month that leads up to the High Holy Days, and so there are a couple of things that we do during Elul to mark this time, to start us reflecting, to get us in the mood and the mindset for the days ahead. The first thing is that we sing a verse from a section of Psalm 27.
Could we add let's add one more announcement.
Sure.
That 2 weeks from tonight, we have our first Shabbat Nashira of the year, where we form our circle of sacred song, a beautiful meditative, rousing service. Please come join us for that, followed by potluck dinner.
6:30 on September 20th.
6:30, yes.
Yes, Ruth.
I may not have paid attention, but I heard all this great stuff I heard what they talked about. I think at 7:30 tomorrow.
Havdalah?
Yeah.
It was announced, 7 o'clock tomorrow
7
on
o'clock.
Zoom.
Mhm.
The link is in your email.
No, next week they were talking about what they talked about. Never mind.
All right.
Okay.
Pay attention.
All right. So, Psalm 27, on the back of your supplement is a particular verse from Psalm 27. One thing I ask God to dwell in God's house all the days of my life, to live that kind of life, to be a person who lives a good and godly life. This is a prayer to bring us into that kind of mindset. Achat sha'alti.
Achat sha'alti meit Adonai, ota avakesh. Achat sha'alti meit Adonai, ota avakesh. Shivti beveit Adonai, kol yemei chayai, v'chazot b'noam Adonai, uvaker b'heichalo. V'chazot b'noam Adonai, uvaker b'heichalo.
First time, always a revelation. We'll be singing it every week over the next few weeks. So that's the first thing that we do to remind us that it is Elul, it is time to come. Anybody know what the second thing that we do is? Please rise.
Tikkiya.
Boy, it's been about 11 months.
There it
Shabbat
Shko.
shalom.
is. Shko.
Go out to the foyer for Kiddush and Motzi. Those of you who are on YouTube, come back over to Zoom and join us there. You'll be able to see us in the foyer. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Shko.
Yeah.